The founding of Silent Hill begins not with the construction of wood and mortar, but with the ancient sanctity of the land itself. Long before the arrival of European settlers, the indigenous people recognized the region as a place of immense spiritual gravity. They referred to this sacred territory as the place of the silent spirits. To them, the land was a mirror that amplified the inner resonance of those who walked upon it. It was a site where the veil between the physical world and the metaphysical realm was exceptionally thin, allowing for communion with nature. The spirits inhabited the trees, the water of Toluca Lake, and the very soil. This primitive power was neutral, a raw energy that functioned as a focal point for rituals. The settlers did not understand this delicate balance, and their presence acted as a disruptive catalyst that began to warp the local frequency. The shift began in the late 17th century when settlers occupied the region. These newcomers were puritanical and brought a rigid belief system at odds with the ancient spirituality of the land. In 1692, as the witch trials consumed New England, the first structures rose. The settlers sought to establish a sanctified community free from outside influence. However, the land did not yield. Early inhabitants reported whispers in the fog and shadows that lingered long after sunset. They interpreted these through their own theology, viewing the land as a wilderness infested by the devil. This adversarial relationship between the inhabitants and the earth planted the seeds of the town's history of psychological and physical violence. By the early 18th century, the settlement was named Silent Hill, a literal interpretation of the eerie quiet that descended when the fog rolled in from Toluca Lake. In 1710, a massive wave of an unknown plague swept through. This was no ordinary illness. Symptoms were described as a breakdown of the senses followed by deep despair. Hundreds perished, and the town was briefly abandoned. The remaining settlers utilized the land in ways that further desecrated its sanctity. Mass graves were dug near the shore, and the collective trauma of the dying seeped into the ground. This was the first instance where the land's ability to mirror emotion resulted in a permanent darkening of its aura. The grief of the victims was absorbed by the soil, becoming a permanent layer of the town's architecture. The town was resettled in the mid-1700s as a penal colony. This introduced the energy of the condemned. Silent Hill became a place of exile for those who committed crimes against the crown. The construction of prison facilities marked the town's role as a site of punishment. The guards were often as cruel as the prisoners. The atmosphere was defined by the clinking of chains and screams. The land was now being fed a diet of guilt, resentment, and pain. The mirror of the spirits began to reflect the bars of the cells and the cruelty of the gallows. This period solidified the town's identity as a location where the boundary between punisher and punished was blurred. During the late 18th century, the American Revolutionary War brought more turmoil. While distant from major battlefields, the town was not immune to political fractures. Loyalists and revolutionaries turned against each other, leading to clandestine executions. The fog became a tool for those who wished to disappear or hunt their neighbors in secret. The town developed a reputation as a place where one could easily lose their way. During these years, a secretive religious sect appeared. This group believed the town's properties could harness a new world order. They synthesized indigenous beliefs with occult practices, seeing the darkness as a womb for a sleeping deity. This was the birth of the Order, the shadowy organization that would eventually dominate the town's secret history. The formal incorporation occurred in the 19th century as Silent Hill transitioned into an industrial center. The discovery of coal led to a brief boom. Mines were dug deep, puncturing the veins of the land. Miners reported strange entities in the dark shafts, creatures made of stone and smoke. These were the first manifestations of the town's ability to give physical form to subconscious fears. The mining era brought wealth but disturbed deeper layers of spiritual focal points. The town expanded with the construction of Brookhaven Hospital in 1860 to deal with accidents and mysterious illnesses. The hospital became a landmark of twisted history, but at its founding, it was a symbol of the attempt to civilize a land that refused to be tamed. As the 19th century progressed, the town was used for prisoners during the Civil War. Toluca Prison was expanded to house soldiers from both sides. Conditions were horrific, and the death toll was high. The presence of so many men sharing intense longing for home and fear of death created a surge in the land's energy. During this time, the first sightings of the otherworld were documented. A guard reported a corridor transforming into rusted metal and pulsating flesh. He described distant sirens and the feeling of being watched by infinite eyes. This was the moment the veil truly broke. The land had been saturated with enough suffering to create a permanent alternate reality, a dark reflection accessed by those in extreme distress. By the late 1800s, Silent Hill shifted toward tourism, a thin veneer over a rotting core. The lakeside amusement park and grand hotels sought to mask the dark history. However, the order remained entrenched, controlling the government and police. They viewed tourists as sheep to be led toward birthing a god. The discovery of the white Claudia plant, a local hallucinogen, provided a new tool. They processed it into a drug called PTV, distributed to tourists and locals. This was a spiritual catalyst that thinned the barriers of the mind, making individuals more susceptible to the alternate reality. The integration of chemical manipulation with ancient energy ensured Silent Hill would never be normal. The silence was now a heavy, suffocating presence demanding a sacrifice. As the new century dawned, the town stood ready to consume the innocent and the guilty alike. This is the truth of the birth of Silent Hill. The rise of the order and the preparation of the vessel marks the transition of Silent Hill from a place of latent spiritual energy into a weaponized engine of theological horror. By the early 20th century, the cult had fully infiltrated the town's most vital institutions, including the hospital, the police force, and the local government. They were no longer a fringe group of occultists. They were the invisible hand guiding the destiny of every citizen. The leadership of the order, comprised of high-ranking families like the Gillespies and the Falcons, became obsessed with the realization of their central prophecy, the descent of God to create a world of eternal paradise. However, their definition of paradise was one born of blood and fire, necessitating the complete destruction of the current reality. To achieve this, they needed a catalyst, a soul capable of acting as a bridge between the physical world and the nightmare realm that had been festering beneath the town's surface since its founding. This search for a vessel culminated in the birth of Alessa Gillespie. Born to Dahlia Gillespie, a prominent and fanatical high priestess of the order, Alessa was recognized from an early age as a child of incredible and terrifying potential. Unlike the other children in Silent Hill, Alessa possessed natural psionic abilities that allowed her to tap into the town's dormant spiritual resonance. She was a quiet, sensitive child who was frequently bullied by her peers and isolated by her community, who sensed the otherness that clung to her. This isolation and the subsequent trauma of her childhood were not accidental. They were cultivated by Dahlia. The order understood that for a vessel to be effective, it had to be saturated with suffering. Suffering was the fuel that would allow the god to manifest. Dahlia viewed her own daughter not as a human being, but as a biological tool, a sacrificial lamb whose pain would pave the way for the cult's salvation. The training of Alessa was a systematic process of psychological and physical breaking. Dahlia subjected her daughter to ritualistic abuse, forcing her to participate in ceremonies that further thinned the veil between her mind and the other world. During these rituals, Alessa would often manifest objects or alter the environment around her, unintentionally proving to the order that she was indeed the one they had been waiting for. The cult began to use the white Claudia plant to further enhance her receptivity, keeping her in a state of constant drug-induced trance. They believed that by keeping her mind in the threshold of the abyss, they could ensure the god seeds would take root in her womb. The atmospheric pressure in Silent Hill began to shift during this period. The fog became thicker, and the darkness began to leak into the mundane world with greater frequency, responding to the growing power within the young girl. The culmination of the order's plan occurred at the Gillespie house, where a ritual of immense violence was performed to force the birth of the god. Dahlia and other cult members set the house ablaze, trapping Alessa inside. They intended for the extreme trauma of being burned alive to act as the final push needed for the god's manifestation. As the flames consumed the structure, Alessa's psychic scream tore through the metaphysical fabric of the town. Instead of a clean birth, however, the process was fractured. Alessa's soul, In a desperate attempt to protect itself and the world from the horrors the cult was trying to unleash, split in two. One half remained in her charred, barely living body, kept alive by the very God that was trying to manifest, while the other half was projected out into the world as a newborn infant. This infant, later named Cheryl, was found on the side of a road by Harry Mason and his wife, far away from the cursed boundaries of Silent Hill. In the aftermath of the fire, the Order was left with a half-formed vessel. Alessa was moved to the basement of Brookhaven Hospital, where she was kept in a state of eternal agony. The cult used magical and medical means to ensure she could not die, as her death would mean the end of their god. For 7 years, Alessa existed as a living corpse, her mind trapped in an endless loop of the fire and the abuse she had suffered. Because she was still linked to the town's energy, her nightmare began to bleed into the streets of Silent Hill on a permanent basis. This was the true origin of the Fog World and the Otherworld as players know them. The monsters that began to roam the town were manifestations of Alessa's fears, distorted nurses representing her stay in the hospital, and twisted, childlike creatures representing her bullies. The town was no longer just a mirror of anyone who entered. It was now permanently calibrated to the frequency of Alessa's suffering. While Alessa remained in the hospital, the Order did not remain idle. They continued to refine their control over the town, waiting for the missing half of the soul to return. They knew that as long as the soul was fractured, the god could not be born. They utilized the PTV drug trade to maintain their financial power and to keep the population in a state of spiritual decay. The hospital staff, particularly Dr. Michael Kaufman, became essential collaborators, providing the medical expertise needed to maintain the vessel while also profiting from the cult's illicit activities. The synergy between the cult's religious zeal and the town's industrial and medical corruption created a closed loop of control. Silent Hill became a trap, a geographical anomaly where time and space were subject to the whims of a tortured child's subconscious. The preparation of the vessel also involved the creation of various protective seals and talismans, such as the Seal of Metatron. The Order believed these symbols would protect the god during its gestation, while Alessa used them in her own way to try and stop the ritual. The tension between the mother and the daughter, between the cult and the vessel, became the defining conflict of the town's secret history. Every rusted pipe, every blood-stained wall, and every siren that echoed through the fog was a manifestation of this internal war. The town was waiting for a catalyst to reunite the soul, a moment where the physical and spiritual planes would finally collapse into one another. This was the state of Silent Hill in the years leading up to the return of Cheryl, a town poised on the edge of a total metaphysical collapse, held together only by the sheer will of a dying girl and the fanatical greed of her mother. As Part 2 concludes, the stage is set for the arrival of the outsider. The Order's preparations are complete, and the vessel is ready to be reunited with its missing half. The fog is no longer just a weather phenomenon. It is a shroud, concealing the transition of a human town into a divine womb. The power of the silent spirits has been fully harnessed and twisted into a tool of the Order, and the mirror of the land is now focused entirely on the image of a burning girl. The silence of Silent Hill is the silence of a held breath, right before the scream that will change everything. The cult has its god, the mother has her vessel, and the town has its nightmare. All that remains is for the journey to begin. The arrival of Harry Mason in Silent Hill marks the moment the town's stagnant nightmare was forcibly reactivated by the return of the fractured soul. When Harry and his daughter Cheryl drove toward the resort town for a vacation, they were not merely travelers. They were the final components of a metaphysical circuit that had been broken for 7 years. As they approached the town limits, the psychic resonance of the suffering Alessa Gillespie, sensing the proximity of her missing half, reached out across the fog. This manifested as the spectral image of a young girl standing in the middle of the road, causing Harry to swerve and crash. This event was the catalyst for the systematic collapse of reality. When Harry regained consciousness, Cheryl was gone, lured into the deepening mist by the call of the original soul. This began the process of the reunification of the soul, a journey that would force a mundane man to navigate the layered geography of a hellish internal world. Harry's initial exploration of Old Silent Hill serves as the introduction to the town's shifting nature. The silence was absolute, broken only by the crackle of a broken radio, a device that reacted to the presence of creatures spawned from Alessa's subconscious. In the iconic alleyway sequence, Harry experienced his first transition into the otherworld. The sky darkened into an impossible night, and the architecture transformed into a lattice of rusted metal, blood-soaked grates, and hanging corpses. This transition was the physical manifestation of Alessa's memory of the fire and her subsequent hospital confinement. The monsters Harry encountered, such as the small, knife-wielding gray children, were direct projections of Alessa's childhood trauma and her perception of the children who had mocked her at Midwich Elementary School. Harry was not just walking through a town. He was walking through the psychic entrails of a tortured girl who was using him as a pawn to either end her life or complete her transformation. As Harry moved toward Midwich Elementary School, the influence of the Order became more apparent. Dahlia Gillespie, appearing as a cryptic guide, began to manipulate Harry into performing the cult's work under the guise of saving his daughter. She presented him with the Floros, an ancient artifact she claimed would protect him but was actually designed to trap Alessa's psychic power. The school itself became a central node of horror, reflecting the place where Alessa's social isolation was most acute. The classrooms were warped into chambers of torture, and the boiler room, the site of Alessa's literal and metaphorical burning, became the focal point for the boss manifestation of the split head. Each step Harry took deeper into the school was a step deeper into the past, unearthing the specific agonies that had allowed the Order to anchor their god to this specific geographical location. The town was teaching Harry its history through pain. The narrative then shifted to the Balkan Church and later the Alchemilla Hospital, where the medical corruption of the town was fully exposed. It was here that Harry encountered Michael Kaufman and Lisa Garland. Lisa, a nurse who had been tasked with tending to Alessa's charred body, represented the human cost of the Order's ambitions. Her tragic realization that she was a manifestation of Alessa's memory, a spirit caught in the cycle of the town's nightmare, highlighted the fact that in Silent Hill, death is not an escape. The hospital's descent into the otherworld was the most visceral yet, characterized by pulsating walls and medical equipment turned into instruments of gore. This reflected Alessa's 7 years of being kept in a state of living death, where the smell of antiseptic and the sound of heart monitors were the only things she knew. Harry's presence in the hospital allowed Alessa to project her reality with such force that the mundane world began to lose its hold entirely, turning the entire town into a chaotic blend of overlapping timelines. The role of the Seal of Metatron became a point of contention during this phase of the journey. Alessa was moving through the town, placing these seals in an attempt to create a barrier that would consume both herself and the god, effectively committing a form of spiritual suicide to prevent the apocalypse. However, Dahlia successfully convinced Harry that these marks were creeping darkness that he had to stop. By following Dahlia's instructions, Harry unknowingly dismantled Alessa's only defense against her mother. This tragic irony is central to the lore of the first game. The hero, driven by paternal love, becomes the primary agent of the villain's success. Every time Harry saved a location by defeating a manifestation, he was actually clearing the path for the Order to complete the ritual of the birth. The fog was not just hiding the truth. It was actively shaping Harry's perception to serve the cult's ends. The final descent took Harry to the core of the nightmare, a place known as Nowhere. This was a non-Euclidean space where the various locations Harry had visited, the school, the hospital, the house, were stitched together in a nonsensical, terrifying landscape. Nowhere represented the total disintegration of Alessa's mind as the two halves of her soul were finally brought back into contact. The presence of Cheryl, now fully merged with Alessa, allowed the god to begin its final manifestation. The ritual at the center of the cult's temple beneath the town was the culmination of centuries of preparation. Harry arrived to find Dahlia gloating over the scorched body of her daughter, believing she had finally secured her place in paradise. The atmospheric tension reached a breaking point as the physical world was completely discarded in favor of a void where only the god and its vessel remained. The climax involved the emergence of the incubus or the incubator, depending on Harry's actions throughout the game. If Harry used the aglyphotis, a red liquid made from the white Claudia plant designed to expel demons, he could force the god out of the vessel prematurely. This led to a battle against a winged, skeletal deity that represented the Order's distorted vision of divinity. The defeat of this entity did not bring a happy ending. Instead, it resulted in a momentary reprieve. Alessa, using the last of her strength, gifted Harry with a new infant, a reincarnation of herself and Cheryl, allowing him to escape the collapsing otherworld as she remained behind to perish in the flames. This sacrifice was the final act of the girl who had been the town's victim for so long. She chose to give someone else the life she had been denied, even as the town continued to smolder in the wake of the failed birth. Part 3 concludes with Harry Mason fleeing Silent Hill with a new child in his arms, leaving behind a town that had been forever changed by his arrival. The Order's plan had been thwarted, but they were not destroyed. The town's power remained, now seasoned with the memory of Harry's struggle. The fog settled back over the lake, and the sirens fell silent, but the resonance of the land continued to hum with the energy of what had transpired. Silent Hill had tasted the potential of its god, and it would not forget. The story of the first game proved that the town could be survived, but never truly escaped. The seeds of the future were planted in the ash of the Gillespie house, and the cycle of guilt and manifestation was now a permanent fixture of the landscape. The story of James Sunderland in Silent Hill 2 represents a fundamental shift in how the town's power is understood, moving away from the organized occultism of the Order and toward the deep, personal recesses of the human psyche. While the first game focused on a communal nightmare imposed by Alessa's suffering, the second chapter explores the land's original function as a neutral mirror. James arrives in the town after receiving a letter from his wife, Mary, who has been dead for 3 years. The letter claims she is waiting for him in their special place, the resort town of Silent Hill. This premise establishes the town not as a trap set by a cult, but as a beckoning void that calls out to those harboring suppressed trauma and unresolved guilt. James is not a hero looking for a lost child. He is a broken man looking for a miracle to absolve him of a sin he has not yet admitted to himself. Upon entering the town through the fog-shrouded nature trail, James finds a Silent Hill that is vastly different from the one Harry Mason navigated. The monsters he encounters are not the manifestations of a child's fear of bullies or doctors, but the externalization of his own internal conflicts. The lying figure, a creature trapped in a straitjacket of its own flesh, represents the suffocating stagnation and the agony of Mary's terminal illness. The mannequins, consisting of pairs of feminine legs, reflect James's sexual frustration and the objectification of the female form during the years he spent as a caregiver to a dying wife. The most iconic of these manifestations, Pyramid Head, serves as a relentless executioner. He is the personification of James's desire for punishment, a figure derived from a historical painting of the town's old executioners that James saw during a previous visit. Pyramid Head exists to remind James of the reality he is trying to escape, repeatedly killing a version of Mary to force James to witness his own internal violence. As James explores the Woodside Apartments and the Brookhaven Hospital, he encounters other individuals who have been summoned by the town's resonance. Angela Orozco and Eddie Dombrowski represent different facets of the human shadow. Angela is a victim of horrific familial abuse whose version of the town is constantly on fire, reflecting her eternal sense of being trapped and consumed. Eddie is a man driven to murderous rage by a lifetime of ridicule and perceived inadequacy. Through these characters, the lore confirms that Silent Hill is a subjective experience. It is a personalized hell where the environmental hazards and enemies are tailored to the specific emotional baggage of the individual. James's interactions with them highlight his own lack of empathy and his deepening detachment from reality as he pursues the ghost of his wife. The town acts as a laboratory of the soul, stripping away the layers of denial until only the raw truth remains. The character of Maria is the town's most sophisticated creation in this era of the lore. She is an idealized, more sexually provocative version of Mary, manifested by the town to tempt James and distract him from his guilt. Maria is a living paradox. She possesses Mary's memories and voice, but lacks her illness and the history of resentment that defined the end of their marriage. Her presence creates a psychological loop where James is forced to watch her die over and over again. Each time Maria is killed by Pyramid Head, it is a reenactment of the emotional death James experienced during Mary's decline and a foreshadowing of the truth regarding Mary's actual end. Maria is the mirror's attempt to provide James with what he wants. But because the land is a place of silenced spirits, what he wants is inherently tainted by the shadow of what he has done. The descent continues into the historical society and the Toluca prison, moving beneath the surface of the town into a literal and metaphorical abyss. This subterranean journey represents James's descent into his own subconscious. The architecture becomes increasingly nonsensical, filled with endless holes that James must jump into, symbolizing his total surrender to the darkness within. It is here that the lore connects the personal trauma to the town's history as a penal colony. The cells and execution chambers of the past provide the aesthetic framework for James's final confrontation with his guilt. The town uses its history of corporal punishment to provide the tools for James's self-flagellation. In this deep, dark place, the boundary between the 19th century prison and James's 20th century mind vanishes entirely. The climax occurs at the Lakeview Hotel, the special place mentioned in the letter. After finding a videotape, James is forced to watch the truth. He did not wait 3 years for Mary to die of illness. In a moment of exhausted despair and misplaced mercy, he smothered her with a pillow only a few days before coming to the town. The letter was a hallucination, a psychological construct designed to lead him to the place where he could no longer hide from himself. With the truth revealed, the hotel, which had appeared pristine and nostalgic, transforms into a burnt-out, water-damaged ruin. This shift reflects the collapse of James's delusions. The final battle is not against an external demon but against 2 pyramid heads, representing his dual need for punishment and the realization that he no longer needs the executioners once the guilt has been fully acknowledged. The endings of Silent Hill 2 provide a multifaceted look at the town's ultimate judgment. In the Leave ending, James finds the strength to move on, taking the lessons of the nightmare to live a better life. In the In Water ending, the weight of the guilt is too great, and he chooses to join Mary in the depths of Toluca Lake, succumbing to the town's gravity. The Maria ending shows James choosing the delusion over the truth, trapped in a cycle where Maria begins to cough, hinting that the nightmare will repeat itself forever. Finally, the Rebirth ending involves the use of the Order's old artifacts to attempt a resurrection, showing how the town's ancient cult lore can be co-opted by individual desperation. These paths emphasize that while the town provides the stage, the individual provides the script. Silent Hill is an indifferent judge that allows the visitor to determine their own salvation or destruction. Part 4 concludes with the legacy of James's journey. His story refined the understanding of Silent Hill as a place where the otherworld is a psychological landscape. The Order may have provided the initial spark through their rituals, but the land itself is the true protagonist, a sentient, shifting environment that feeds on the complexities of human emotion. The fog of Silent Hill 2 is not just a barrier but a canvas, and James Sunderland was the artist who painted it with his own sorrow. As he leaves or disappears into the lake, the town resets, the fog returns to its neutral state, and the spirits fall silent once more, waiting for the next person whose heart is heavy enough to tear a hole in the fabric of reality. The town of Silent Hill remains a silent witness to the infinite variations of human suffering. The return to the religious roots of the town occurs in the story of Heather Mason, the protagonist of Silent Hill 3. While the previous chapter focused on the internal psychology of a lone man, this era of the lore reunites the psychological power of the land with the fanatical ambitions of the Order. Heather is the reincarnation of Alessa Gillespie and Cheryl Mason, the infant given to Harry at the end of the first incident. For 17 years, Harry had moved from city to city, changing their names and even his own appearance to protect his daughter from the cult that still hunted her. However, the Order's reach was long and their patience was infinite. The story begins not in the town itself, but in a distant shopping mall, showing that the influence of the otherworld had expanded. Because Heather is the original vessel, the nightmare follows her. She does not need to be in Silent Hill to see the walls bleed or the floors turn to industrial grates. Her very presence acts as a mobile epicenter for the town's corruptive energy. The primary antagonist of this chapter is Claudia Wolf, a childhood friend of Alessa and a high-ranking member of the Order. Claudia's motivation is rooted in a twisted sense of empathy. She witnessed Alessa's suffering and came to believe that only a world ruled by the Order's God could eliminate the pain of humanity. To her, a world without suffering is a world without life as we know it, and she is willing to commit any atrocity to bring about this paradise. Her first move is to orchestrate the murder of Harry Mason. By killing the only person Heather loves, Claudia seeks to fill Heather's heart with the exact type of hatred and resentment required to nourish the god growing inside her. This act of violence forces Heather to return to Silent Hill, not as a tourist or a seeker of truth, but as a daughter consumed by a thirst for vengeance. The cycle of the Order had come full circle. The daughter was being led back to the site of her mother's execution. Upon arriving in the fog-shrouded streets, Heather finds a town that is even more aggressive than the one Harry or James encountered. The monsters are more organic and visceral, reflecting a biological horror that mimics the process of pregnancy and birth. Creatures like the insane cancer and the numb body represent the physical toll of the god's gestation within Heather's own body. The psychological mirror of the land is now reflecting the specific trauma of Alessa's past merged with Heather's modern anxieties. As Heather navigates the Hilltop Center and the Brookhaven Hospital, she encounters Vincent Smith, a priest of the Order who represents the cynical, financial side of the cult. Vincent views the religion as a means of control and profit, creating a schism between his pragmatism and Claudia's fanaticism. This internal conflict within the Order reveals that the cult is not a monolith, but a fractured organization struggling to control a power they do not fully understand. The lore deepens as Heather visits the Church of the Order, built over the ruins of the fire. Here, the history of the cult is laid bare through various scriptures and paintings. The Order's theology is revealed to be a mixture of distorted Christian tropes and indigenous sun worship, centered on the idea that God was born from the desire for salvation and will return through a chosen vessel. Heather is forced to confront the memory of her past self, Alessa, through a confrontation with the memory of Alessa, a charred, blackened version of herself that represents the part of her soul that never left the fire. This battle is a symbolic attempt at self-exorcism. By defeating her past, Heather tries to reclaim her identity as a separate individual, refusing to be the tool that her mother and the cult intended her to be. The town's ability to manifest the past becomes a gauntlet that Heather must run to find the strength to defy her destiny. The role of the Valtiel creature is crucial in this part of the lore. Valtiel is an angel or servant of the god whose sole purpose is to ensure the successful birth of the deity. Unlike Pyramid Head, who acted as an executioner, Valtiel is an observer and a protector of the vessel. Throughout the game, Valtiel is seen turning valves, symbolizing the transition between the worlds and the progression of the god's growth. If Heather dies, Valtiel is seen dragging her body away to resurrect her, ensuring that the vessel remains intact until the ritual is complete. This presence highlights the deterministic nature of the Order's plan. They have invoked forces that operate outside the human concepts of life and death. The town has become a biological machine, and Heather is the core processor that keeps the nightmare running. The climax takes place in the heart of the church, where Claudia awaits the final transition. In a moment of extreme desperation, Heather uses a pendant given to her by Harry, which contains a small amount of the Aglaophotis liquid. By swallowing the liquid and vomiting the premature god, Heather manages to stop the birth. However, the fanaticism of Claudia is so absolute that she swallows the fetus herself, offering her own body as a substitute vessel. This desperate act results in the birth of a monstrous, incomplete deity, a manifestation of the Order's god that is nothing more than a grotesque parody of divinity. The final battle represents the ultimate rejection of the cult's ideology. By destroying this entity, Heather effectively kills the dream of the Order and avenges her father's death. The ending of Silent Hill 3 is one of survival but also of profound loss. Heather survives and retains her identity, but the world she knew is gone. She is the last of the Gillespie line, carrying the memories of 2 lives and the weight of a town's worth of sins. The Order's power is broken, their leadership dead, and their temple destroyed. Yet, the land of Silent Hill remains. The game confirms that while the cult may rise and fall, the power of the place is independent of the people who try to use it. The darkness that Alessa released has become a permanent feature of the region. Heather's journey proved that the cycle could be interrupted, but the ending suggests that as long as the town exists, the potential for another god or another vessel remains buried in the fog. Part 5 concludes with Heather Mason standing in the sunlight, finally free from the shadow of her past, yet forever marked by the brand of the Order. The story of the third game solidified the mythology of the cult and established the biological rules of the otherworld. It showed that the town's influence could reach far beyond its borders, and that the god of Silent Hill is a reflection of the collective desire for an end to suffering, no matter the cost. As Heather walks away, the town returns to its slumber, its streets filled with the ghosts of the Gillespies and the Masons, waiting for the next era to begin. The silence returns to the hill, but it is a silence filled with the echoes of a god that was almost born. The story of Walter Sullivan and the ritual of the Holy Assumption in Silent Hill 4. The room introduces a unique expansion of the lore, demonstrating that the town's corruptive influence is not tethered only to the physical streets of the resort, but can be anchored to specific locations through the sheer force of human will. Walter Sullivan was an orphan abandoned in room 302 of the Ashfield Heights apartment building. This room, which he mistakenly believed was his birth mother, became the focal point of his existence. Taken in by the Wish House Orphanage, a facility run by the Order in the woods surrounding Silent Hill, Walter was indoctrinated into the cult's most extreme subsect, the sect of the Holy Mother. This group believed that by performing a series of 21 murders, they could perform the 21 sacraments, a ritual intended to purify the world and wake the mother from her slumber. Walter did not view himself as a serial killer. He viewed himself as a child trying to find his way home, and the town provided the metaphysical tools to turn his psychosis into a terrifying reality. Walter's training at Wish House involved the synthesis of the town's ancient energy with the cult's ritualistic gore. He was taught that each victim in the 21 sacraments represented a specific concept required to build a bridge to the divine. The first 10 victims were killed in the mundane world, an event known as the 10 Hearts Murders. Following these killings, Walter performed a ritual of suicide in his prison cell, which allowed him to transcend his physical body and become a ghost-like entity capable of manipulating the fabric of space. This is a critical development in the lore. It proves that a person can become a permanent fixture of the otherworld through ritualistic sacrifice. Walter's soul became the architect of a series of pocket dimensions that mimicked the locations of his childhood: the forest, the prison, the mall, all while remaining tethered to room 302 in Ashfield. The room became a localized version of Silent Hill, a space where the walls could bleed and time had no meaning. The protagonist of this chapter, Henry Townsend, finds himself trapped within room 302 after the ritual begins to reach its climax. The room is physically chained from the inside, and the only means of escape is through a series of holes that manifest in the bathroom and laundry room walls. These holes act as portals into Walter's world of madness, a nightmare realm constructed from Walter's memories and the collective suffering of his victims. Unlike previous protagonists who were drawn to the town by their own guilt, Henry is an innocent bystander, a victim of circumstance who represents the 21st and final sacrament, the receiver of wisdom. This shift in perspective highlights the predatory nature of the Order's rituals. The darkness of Silent Hill can ensnare anyone who happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, provided they fit the ritualistic requirements of the architect. The hauntings within the room represent a new evolution of the town's manifestation powers. As Henry progresses through Walter's worlds, the apartment itself begins to degrade. Shadows appear on the walls, faucets leak blood, and the spirit of a young Walter Sullivan begins to appear, representing the innocent child Walter once was. The ghosts of Walter's previous victims also invade the space, appearing as immortal, twitching apparitions that cannot be killed by conventional means. This introduces the concept of victim spirits into the lore, souls that are permanently bound to the site of their murder, forced to serve the will of the person who killed them. The town's ability to trap souls is here applied to an apartment building miles away, proving that the spiritual gravity of the place of the silent spirits has a reach that is no longer limited by geography. The role of Eileen Galvin, Henry's neighbor, and the 20th Sacrament, the Mother Reborn, adds a layer of vulnerability and urgency to the narrative. Eileen is possessed by Walter's influence, her body becoming a canvas for the ritual's progression. Her descent into madness and physical injury mirrors the corruption of the town itself. The relationship between the adult Walter, the child Walter, and the room creates a trinity of horror that Henry must navigate. The adult Walter acts as the primary antagonist, a relentless stalker who carries a variety of weapons and appears at random intervals to hunt Henry. This version of Walter is an extension of the town's executioner archetype, similar to Pyramid Head, but with a deeply personal and human motivation. He is trying to cleanse the room so he can finally be reunited with his mother. The climax occurs deep within the bowels of the apartment's sublevels, where the physical body of Walter Sullivan is kept in a secret chamber. The ritual requires Henry to use the umbilical cord, a remnant of Walter's birth, to weaken the spirit of the killer. This detail emphasizes the biological and visceral nature of the Order's magic. It is always rooted in the physical reality of the body, birth, and death. The final battle takes place in a void that looks like a giant, pulsating heart, representing the mother that Walter is trying to wake. By defeating Walter and preventing the 21st Sacrament, Henry can potentially break the curse of the room. However, the lore suggests that the damage is permanent. Even if Henry escapes, the building remains a site of mass murder and occult activity, forever stained by the energy of the 21 Sacraments. The endings of Silent Hill 4 offer varying degrees of grimness. In the escape ending, Henry and Eileen survive, but the room remains haunted. In the 21 Sacraments ending, Walter succeeds, the room is purified, and the spirits of the victims are seen inhabiting the apartment forever. This ending is particularly significant because it shows the cult's rituals actually succeeding in creating a permanent, localized hell. The story of Walter Sullivan serves as a bridge between the Old Order lore and the broader, more modern interpretations of the town's power. It confirms that the Silent Hill effect is a viral form of spiritual corruption that can be transmitted through ritual, objects, or even specific memories. The room is the hill, and the hill is the room. Part 6 concludes with the realization that the town's power is no longer dormant or confined. Through Walter Sullivan, Silent Hill proved it could manifest its nightmare in the heart of a bustling city. The Order's influence had evolved from a local cult into a metaphysical pathogen. The silence was now spreading, room by room, street by street. As Henry leaves the hospital or succumbs to the ritual, the history of the town continues to grow, absorbing the lives of those caught in its wake. The 21 Sacraments were just one way the darkness could be invited into our world, and though Walter was defeated, the blueprint for his madness remains in the archives of the Order. The silence of the room is the same silence as the fog, and the nightmare is far from over. The story of Travis Grady in Silent Hill Origins serves as a vital prequel that bridges the gap between the ancient indigenous legends and the specific events of the first game. Travis, a long-haul trucker with a fractured past, finds himself drawn into the town's orbit when he takes a shortcut through the foggy outskirts of Silent Hill. His arrival is not a matter of chance. Like those who would follow him decades later, Travis is a man whose internal landscape is perfectly tuned to the town's frequency. He is a survivor of immense childhood trauma, having dealt with a mother who suffered from severe mental illness and a father who succumbed to the weight of his own despair. When Travis rescues a charred young girl from a burning house, the infamous Gillespie residence, he unknowingly involves himself in the Order's most critical ritual. This act of heroism plunges him into a psychological gauntlet where he must confront the ghosts of his own family while serving as a catalyst for the birth of the cult's god. The mechanics of the Otherworld in this era are defined by Travis's unique ability to transition between realities using mirrors. This is a literal manifestation of the lore's core principle, that Silent Hill is a mirror reflecting the soul. By touching the silvered glass found throughout the town's decaying buildings, Travis can step into the dark reflection of his surroundings. This transition reveals the town in its most visceral form, a place of rust, blood, and industrial decay. The monsters Travis encounters are deeply personal. The remnant represents the shadowy, fading memories of his past, while the butcher serves as a brutal, executioner-like figure that mirrors Travis's own potential for violence and the repressed anger he carries toward his father. The butcher is an early iteration of the town's judge archetype, a precursor to Pyramid Head, roaming the streets to slaughter other manifestations in a display of raw, unmitigated cruelty. The exploration of the Alchemilla Hospital and the Cedar Grove Sanitarium provides the backdrop for Travis's personal reckoning. In the sanitarium, Travis is forced to confront the memory of his mother, Helen Grady, who believed that there was a world behind the mirrors and tried to kill her son to save him from it. The town manifests her not as she was, but as Travis remembers her, a monster trapped in a cage of her own madness. Similarly, in the Riverside Motel, Travis relives the trauma of his father's suicide. The motel becomes a labyrinth of grief, culminating in a battle against the memory of Richard Grady. Through these encounters, the lore establishes that the town's power is not just a tool for the order, but a parasitic force that feeds on the specific details of a visitor's biography. Travis is being used by the town to cleanse his own past, but this process only serves to strengthen the barrier between him and the mundane world. While Travis navigates his personal hell, the Order, led by Dahlia Gillespie and supported by the cold, calculating Dr. Michael Kaufman, is working in the shadows to complete the ritual involving the burned Alessa. They need Travis to collect the pieces of the Floros, an ancient, multidimensional puzzle box that can trap and amplify psychic energy. Dahlia manipulates Travis, much as she would later manipulate Harry Mason, by presenting herself as a cryptic ally. She understands that Travis's proximity to the void in his own heart makes him the perfect conduit for the Floros. As Travis assembles the device, he is actually constructing the prison that will hold Alessa's soul. The irony of Travis's journey is that his attempts to help the girl he saved from the fire only lead to her further incarceration and the eventual split of her soul into two halves. The role of the Floros in the lore is expanded here, showing it to be an artifact of unknown origin that predates the town's colonial history. It is described as a cage for a demon or a focus for the mind. By completing the Floros, Travis inadvertently triggers the manifestation of Alessa's dream, a psychic explosion that transforms the entire town into a permanent nightmare state. This event explains why the town remained in such a fractured condition by the time Harry Mason arrived years later. The ritual was not a failure of power, but a failure of control. The energy released was too great for the cult to contain, leading to the creation of the infant Cheryl, the second half of Alessa's soul, who was spirited away by the psychic projection of Alessa herself. Travis is the one who finds the infant at the end of the struggle, and his decision to leave the town with his sanity intact is the only good ending available in a story defined by tragedy. The climax of the story takes place in the dark heart of the town, where Travis must face the devil, a manifestation of the god that the Order is trying to birth. This entity is a reflection of the cult's collective desire and Alessa's immense pain. By defeating it, Travis provides a momentary reprieve for the town, but the damage is done. Alessa's soul is fractured, and the town is now a fully realized engine of psychological manifestation. The endings of Origins provide a look at Travis's ultimate fate. In the good ending, he leaves Silent Hill, having confronted his past and found the strength to drive his truck into the sunrise. However, in the bad ending, it is revealed that Travis may have actually been the butcher all along, a serial killer who used the town's fog to mask his own crimes. This ambiguity reinforces the theme that Silent Hill does not care about the objective truth. It only cares about the truth the visitor carries in their heart. Part 7 concludes with the departure of Travis Grady, leaving the town of Silent Hill in the hands of the Order. The Origins era solidified the timeline and provided the mechanical explanation for how the otherworld functions. It showed that the mirrors of the town are always watching, and that the past is never truly buried. Travis was the first to navigate the layered reality of the modern era, and his journey set the stage for everything that followed. The Floros was the key, Alessa was the lock, and Travis was the hand that turned it. As he drives away, the infant in the back of his mind, and eventually in Harry's arms, becomes the new focal point for the town's long, patient wait. The fire has gone out, but the ash remains, and the silence is deeper than ever before. The legacy of Travis Grady is one of the unwitting architect. He did not intend to build the nightmare, but by trying to fix his own broken life, he provided the materials the Order needed. This era of the lore reminds us that even acts of kindness in Silent Hill are subject to the corruption of the land. The spirits are no longer silenced. They are screaming through the glass, and they are hungry for the next traveler. The founding was the foundation, the vessel was the frame, and Travis was the one who finished the rooms of the house. Now the house is ready for its guests. The history of the hill is a history of the heart, and the heart of Travis Grady was just the beginning of the end. The story of Alex Shepard in Silent Hill. Homecoming explores the expansion of the town's influence into the neighboring community of Shepherd's Glen. This chapter of the lore reveals that the corruption of Silent Hill is not an isolated phenomenon, but a parasitic force that demands a high price for the survival of the surrounding settlements. Shepherd's Glen was founded by 4 families who broke away from the Order in Silent Hill: the Shepherds, the Holloways, the Bartletts, and the Fitches. To maintain their independence and ensure the safety of their town, these families struck a dark pact with the Order's deity. Every 50 years, each family was required to sacrifice one of their own children to appease the god. This ritual was the secret foundation of Shepherd's Glen, a town built on a legacy of systematic infanticide. When the current generation failed to complete the sacrifices, the protection vanished, and the nightmare of Silent Hill began to bleed into the streets of the Glen. Alex Shepard returns to his hometown believing he is a soldier discharged from a military hospital, only to find the town shrouded in an unnatural fog and his younger brother, Joshua, missing. This setup is the first layer of Alex's personal delusion. Much like James Sunderland, Alex's perception of reality is a defensive construct designed to shield his mind from a truth he cannot accept. The monsters he encounters are high-definition manifestations of the broken pact and the specific methods of the family sacrifices. For example, Sepulchre represents the Bartlett family's sacrifice, who was buried alive. The creature is a gargantuan, tree-like entity with limbs that must be severed. Scarlet, a grotesque doll-like monster, represents the Fitch family's sacrifice, who was dismembered. These entities prove that the town's power can animate the specific guilt of an entire community, turning their secret sins into physical gods that demand a final reckoning. The Otherworld in Homecoming is characterized by a mechanical, industrial decay that reflects the cold, calculated nature of the pact. Walls do not just bleed. They peel away like skin to reveal a world of rusted fans, searing steam, and grinding gears. This aesthetic mirrors the machine of the town's social structure, a system where children are processed as fuel for the survival of the collective. As Alex searches for Joshua, he is forced to navigate the Grand Hotel and the Shepherd's Glen police station, locations that have become outposts for the Silent Hill reality. The fog here acts as a bridge, allowing the spirits of the sacrificed children to manifest as vengeful entities. The lurkers and feral hounds that roam the streets are not just obstacles. They are the physical symptoms of a town that has lost its spiritual immunity. The role of the Order in this era is represented by Judge Holloway, who seeks to restart the cult's influence by strictly adhering to the ancient ways. Unlike the religious fanatical approach of Dahlia Gillespie, the Holloway faction views the sacrifices as a necessary social contract. They have established a clandestine operation in the underground tunnels of the Silent Hill prison and the church, using modern technology and medieval torture to maintain their control. This highlights the evolution of the cult into a more paramilitary and organized force. They believe that through the blood of the Shepherds, they can regain the god's favor. This conflict puts Alex in direct opposition to his own mother and the very institutions he was raised to respect, forcing him to realize that the monsters are often the people wearing human faces. The central manifestation for Alex is the Bogeyman, a figure that serves as a direct parallel to Pyramid Head. While James Sunderland's Pyramid Head was an executioner born of a desire for punishment, Alex's Bogeyman is a symbol of parental neglect and the looming threat of the father. He represents the crushing weight of the Shepard family's legacy and the specific fear Alex felt toward his father, Adam Shepard, who treated Alex with coldness and distance to prepare himself for the eventual sacrifice. The bogeyman is a silent judge who watches Alex's progress, appearing at pivotal moments of death and transition. He is the personification of the bad father, the one who breaks the bond of protection in favor of the cult's demands. The climax reveals the ultimate truth of Alex's identity. He was never a soldier. He was a patient in a psychiatric hospital because he accidentally caused the death of his brother, Joshua, during a boat trip on Toluca Lake. This accidental death was the catalyst that broke the 50-year pact. Because Joshua was the intended sacrifice for the Shepherd family, his accidental death meant the ritual was not performed correctly, leading to the town's collapse. Adam Shepherd's coldness toward Alex was a result of the guilt of knowing he would eventually have to kill his son, and the tragedy of losing the wrong son first. The final boss, Amnion, is a mechanical, spider-like creature with a human face that literally births the corpse of Joshua. This represents the total collapse of Alex's repression and the birth of the truth from the womb of the nightmare. The multiple endings of Homecoming reflect the different ways Alex can reconcile with his past. In the good ending, he escapes the town with his sanity, having forgiven his father and accepted his brother's death. In the bogeyman ending, Alex is transformed into the executioner himself, showing that the cycle of violence in Silent Hill is self-perpetuating. The victim becomes the punisher. Other endings involve Alex being subjected to horrific fates like lobotomies or drowning, emphasizing that the town's judgment is absolute. The story of Alex Shepherd expanded the lore by showing that the Silent Hill effect is a hereditary curse, a debt that must be paid in blood by every generation that dares to live in the shadow of the lake. Part 8 concludes with the realization that the boundaries of Silent Hill are shifting. The Pact of Shepherd's Glen proved that the town's darkness can be exported, and that the silence is a commodity traded for prosperity. The history of the Shepherds is a history of the wrong sacrifice, a reminder that the land's power cannot be cheated or bargained with. As the fog recedes from the glen, it leaves behind a graveyard of a town, its secrets unearthed and its families destroyed. The silence returns to the hill, but it now carries the names of the 4 families, etched into the rusted gears of the otherworld. The god is still waiting, and the debt is still being collected, one soul at a time. The soldier's return was not a homecoming, but an arrival at the altar of an ancient and unforgiving truth. The story of Murphy Pendleton in Silent Hill. Downpour introduces the concept of the town as a divine mechanism for rehabilitation, shifting the environmental focus from the traditional fog and fire to a persistent, cleansing, yet drowning rain. Murphy is a prisoner transferred from Ryle State Penitentiary whose bus crashes on the outskirts of the town. Unlike previous protagonists who were drawn by loss or destiny, Murphy is a man caught in a cycle of systemic and personal vengeance. His guilt is not rooted in a single moment of madness, but in the choices he made to trade his humanity for the chance to punish the man who murdered his son. The town he enters is the southeastern district of Silent Hill, a place of steep cliffs, deep ravines, and waterlogged tunnels. Here, the weather is the primary antagonist. When the rain intensifies into a torrential downpour, the otherworld begins to leak into the streets, manifesting not as rust and metal, but as a world of shifting water, impossible geometry, and the relentless pursuit of an entity known as the Void. This version of the otherworld is uniquely focused on the concept of the run. When the sirens sound and the rain turns to blood, Murphy is often forced into high-speed chases through a collapsing reality where a gravitational singularity, the Void, seeks to consume everything in its path. This reflects Murphy's life as a fugitive and a prisoner. He is a man who has spent years running from the law and from his own conscience. The monsters he encounters, such as the Screamer and the prisoner minion, are manifestations of the violence and the loss of identity he experienced within the penal system. The Screamer, in particular, represents the lingering trauma of his wife's grief and the accusations he faced following their son's death. The town's mirror has calibrated itself to the claustrophobia of a prison cell and the crushing weight of the deep water where Murphy's son was found. A central figure in this era of the lore is the Wheelman, a gargantuan, immobile entity bound to a motorized wheelchair and hooked up to life support systems. The Wheelman represents Frank Coleridge, a correctional officer who was a father figure to Murphy and was ultimately betrayed by the corruption of the prison system. This manifestation serves as a physical monument to Murphy's greatest regret, the moment he was forced to choose between his own survival and the life of a good man. The town forces Murphy to navigate the Devil's Pit and the St. Maria's Monastery, locations that emphasize the fall of grace and the impossibility of true justice in a world defined by revenge. Through these environments, the lore confirms that Silent Hill is not just a place of punishment, but a place of moral inventory where the visitor must decide if they are a victim or a perpetrator. The presence of Howard Blackwood, a mysterious mailman who seems to have lived in the town for decades, adds a layer of continuity to the lore. Howard acts as a neutral observer, suggesting that the town has residents who have learned to live within the fog. He hints that the town is an intelligence that provides people with exactly what they need to find themselves, even if that process is agonizing. This reinforces the idea that Silent Hill is a sentient entity with its own internal logic, operating as a spiritual filter for the world's most broken souls. Murphy's interactions with Howard suggest that there is a way to coexist with the town's power, provided one is willing to accept the truth of their actions without the need for external absolution. The primary human antagonist is Anne Cunningham, a corrections officer and the daughter of the man Murphy was accused of murdering. Anne's presence in the town creates a dual-perspective nightmare. She sees Murphy as a monster, and the town manifests her father's death through her eyes. This leads to the manifestation of the bogeyman in a different form, a massive, rain-slick giant in a gas mask carrying a heavy sledgehammer. Unlike the bogeyman in Homecoming, this version is a shared manifestation of vengeance. For Anne, it is Murphy. For Murphy, it is the cycle of violence he cannot escape. The battle against the bogeyman is not a fight for survival, but a fight to determine who will take the weight of the hammer. It is a ritual of accountability that requires one of them to break the cycle of hate. The climax takes place in the Overlook Penitentiary, a location that represents the ultimate convergence of Murphy's past and present. The prison becomes a shifting labyrinth where the cells of his memory merge with the physical bars of the town's history. To resolve the ritual, Murphy must face the wheelman in a final confrontation that determines his moral standing. The endings of Downpour are determined not just by choices, but by Murphy's moral score, how much mercy he showed to the manifestations of his enemies throughout the game. This confirms that the town's ultimate judgment is based on the capacity for forgiveness. In the forgiveness ending, Murphy and Anne find peace, acknowledging that they were both victims of the same corruption. In the full circle ending, Murphy becomes the wheelman, trapped forever in the prison of his own mind. Part 9 concludes with the idea that the cleansing rain of Silent Hill is a tool for washing away the blood of the past, but it can just as easily drown those who refuse to let go of their anger. Murphy Pendleton's journey showed that the town's power is increasingly focused on the individual's ability to take responsibility for their choices. The Order is no longer the primary driver of the events. The land itself has taken over the role of judge, jury, and executioner. The fog has been replaced by the storm, and the silence has been replaced by the rhythmic beat of the rain on the pavement. Silent Hill is no longer just a place of shadows. It is a place of reflections in the puddles, a place where the water carries the memory of every tear shed and every life lost. As Murphy leaves the town or returns to his cell, the rain continues to fall. The history of the hill is now written in the erosion of the cliffs and the flooding of the streets. The spirits are no longer silenced by the fog, but muffled by the storm. The town remains an island of moral gravity, pulling in those who have lost their way in the sea of human experience. The founding was the earth, the cult was the fire, and Murphy was the water. Only the air remains to be mastered. The journey is almost at its end, and the final chapter of the lore waits in the distance, where the nightmare becomes a global phenomenon. The modern evolution of the Silent Hill phenomenon marks a transition from a localized haunting to a global metaphysical contagion. As we enter the most recent era of the lore, the town is no longer just a geographical location in Maine. It has become a frequency that can manifest anywhere in the world where the psychological conditions are met. This shift is best exemplified by the events in The Short Message and the upcoming historical explorations in Silent Hill F. The core of the lore has expanded to suggest that the Silent Hill effect is a specialized form of spiritual erosion triggered by modern social pressures, isolation, cyberbullying, and the crushing weight of societal expectations. The land's ancient power, which once mirrored the sins of colonial settlers and the zeal of the order, now reflects the digital shadows and the collective anxieties of a hyper-connected, yet deeply lonely generation. The case of Anita in the short message demonstrates that the otherworld can manifest within the urban decay of a modern apartment complex like the villa in Germany. This proves that the place of the silenced spirits was merely a gateway, and the energy itself is a universal human constant. Anita's nightmare is characterized by a relentless, blooming horror, a monster covered in cherry blossoms that represents both the beauty of her lost potential and the suffocating nature of her mother's abuse. The traditional rust and blood are replaced by the visual language of discarded notes and social media notifications, showing that the town's ability to manifest subconscious fears has adapted to the 21st century. The lore now suggests that the otherworld is a parallel layer of existence that is always present, waiting for a crack in an individual's mental health to seep through and anchor itself to a new location. In the broader historical context, the lore is moving back in time to 1960s Japan with Silent Hill F. This era explores the red flower phenomenon, suggesting that the spiritual corruption associated with the town may have roots or parallels in other cultures entirely. The manifestation here involves an infectious, fungal growth that transforms the human body and the environment into a garden of beautiful, terrifying decay. This ties back to the original indigenous legends of the silenced spirits by showing that the land's power is a biological and spiritual parasite that has existed across different continents and eras. The Order's god was just one interpretation of this power. In other places and times, it was seen as a plague, a curse, or a divine transformation. The F in the title hints at a frequency or a floral motif, indicating that the town's reach is as much about the natural world as it is about the man-made structures of the mind. The modern lore also revisits the concept of the Silent Hill phenomenon as a recognized, though misunderstood, psychological anomaly. Research notes and hidden documents in recent stories suggest that medical and scientific organizations are beginning to track these localized reality shifts. However, science is ill-equipped to deal with a threat that is inherently subjective. The town's influence acts like a thought form or a tulpa, gaining strength from the number of people who fear it. As the world becomes more aware of the stories of Alessa, James, and Heather, the collective consciousness provides more fuel for the town to manifest. The legend of Silent Hill has become the very thing that allows the nightmare to spread, turning the town into a mythic archetype that lives in the mind of every person who feels lost or guilty. This expansion serves as the ultimate conclusion to the founding themes. If the town was born from the desecration of sacred land, its modern form is the desecration of the human spirit by the modern world. The silence is no longer just the lack of sound in a foggy street. It is the silence of a girl ignored by her peers, the silence of a victim of domestic violence, and the silence of a society that has forgotten how to heal its own trauma. The otherworld remains a place of trial, but the stakes have become global. The god that the Order tried so hard to birth may have already arrived, not as a single entity, but as the pervasive darkness that now touches every corner of the world where a heart is broken and a mind is fractured. The return to Silent Hill 2 in the modern remake further refines the psychological depth of the lore. It emphasizes that the town is not malicious, but indifferent. It provides the mirror, but it does not choose what the visitor sees. This indifference is what makes it so terrifying. There is no demon to bargain with, only the self to confront. The modern era of the lore focuses on the return, both in the sense of the franchise's revival and the individual's return to their own repressed history. The town has become a permanent landmark in the geography of the human soul. It is a place we go when we have nowhere else to hide, and a place we leave only when we are ready to face the sunlight. As we look at the final horizon of the Silent Hill story, we see that the fog is lifting from the town only to settle over the rest of the world. The history of the hill is the history of us. It is the story of how we handle our pain and what we do with our secrets. The silence is still there, beneath the noise of the modern world, waiting for the moment we stop running. The spirits are still watching, and the mirror is still clear. Whether in the rust of a 1970s hospital, the rain of a 2000s prison, or the cherry blossoms of a 1960s village, the truth remains the same. You cannot run from yourself, especially not in a town that knows exactly who you are. Part 10 concludes this meditation on the lore of Silent Hill. The journey from the place of the silenced spirits to the digital nightmares of today shows a town that is as eternal as the human heart. The silence is the beginning, and the silence is the end. The hill is waiting, the fog is rolling in, and the story is yours to finish. As you drift into sleep, remember that the town is only as dark as the shadows we carry within us. Sleep well, and may your path through the fog lead you to the light. The history is complete, the cycle is closed, and the silence is finally absolute.